Hey guys, it's Molton here and welcome back to my channel. With the aid of computers and databases, it's really difficult these days to come up with anything new in the opening. Most openings are well known with many thousands of practical tests, making it much harder for creative play and innovation. That's why when someone comes up with a novel idea which hasn't been explored much yet, many are eager to jump in and give it a try. One Anti-Sicilian line is gaining lots of popularity ever since Magnus Carlsen used it to defeat Wojtaszek in Shamkir 2018. The following game I will show you is between Dmitry Andreikin and a talented young player, Alireza Firouzja, whom has had a spectacular climb in rating over the past year. Definitely shows qualities of a great player. As always, if you enjoyed the video, smash that like button and subscribe if you want to see more regular chess content. I hope you guys enjoy. The game starts out e4 c5, knight c3 entering into an anti-Sicilian. Black plays the move d6. I'm also going to make a video later on the move knight to c6, offering an anti-Sicilian system which you can consider playing as well. After d6, white normally plays either the close Sicilian or goes for a Grand Prix setup. Instead here white plays the move d4, which is very uncommon, since after pawn takes, queen takes, black can play the move knight to c6, kicking the queen. If black doesn't kick the queen straight away, then white can develop the bishop on c1 to a useful square such as bishop g5 or e3. After knight c6, the white queen doesn't have many good retreat squares apart from queen to d2. The bishop is now blocked and instead we'll have to fianchetto. Already so early on in the game we have a very novel position. If you want an interesting system which is unexplored with plenty of room for fresh new ideas, then this could be worth a shot. Or perhaps simply you want to avoid the main open Sicilian lines. The game continued g6, however if black heads for a normal Sicilian setup such as knight f6, we can continue in a same fashion, castling queenside, and after castles we can either go for a direct pawn storm or simply put our pawn on f4, developing a knight to f3 with somewhat ideal setup of what white is trying to aim for in this position. Instead, black played the move g6, white played the move b3. Black can play bishop g7, but then this allows bishop b2 and castles. Therefore black plays bishop h6, attacking the queen on d2, trying to cause as many problems as possible before white can develop his pieces properly. Here white can't afford the trade of bishops, therefore he has to play the move f4. And black has three main options in this position, starting with two pawn advances, e5 and f5, and there's also knight f6, which I'll take a look at in our following game. Starting with the move e5, trying to utilize the pin on the queen, well, white has a very strong move in this position, and that's the move knight to b5, hitting the weak point on d6. Here black has no better move than bishop takes f4. White can continue queen takes d6, threatening knight c7 check. After black trades, the king moves, and we can follow up with a move bishop to a3, threatening discovered checks along this diagonal. Black can play knight g7. Here we can continue developing. Bishop c4, the most aggressive outpost for our bishop, attacking the pawn on f7. Rook d1. And here there's no need to castle since queens have been traded off, so we want to keep our king centralized. Therefore we can play king e2. And here already white has a very comfortable advantage, since black is going to have a very difficult time to develop the bishop on c8. So instead, in the game, Firouzja chose to play the move f5, which is a very interesting move as well. Here white continued bishop b2, black played knight f6. There are two main options in this position. One is castling queenside, sacking the pawn on e4, and the other option is to play bishop d3, which I think is the slightly more accurate one. After bishop d3, play might continue queen a5, and here I believe we should take the pawn. After bishop takes, our plan is to play knight ge2. For example, here if black chooses to castle, we can continue with castling. King b1. And our plan in this sort position is to continue with the move h3 g4. Once we get in the move g4, white will have a comfortable space advantage and attack on the king side. And I think it's much easier for white to put pressure on black in this position than it is for black to generate counterplay on the queen side. For example, here we could play queen c4 check, rook f7, followed by the move h3, with a comfortable advantage for white. White instead preferred the move castling, which makes sense since this was a blitz game, so he's going for the sharpest possible line. Black took the pawn. White played the move king b1, but I think that bishop c4 might be a slightly even more interesting option here, since it immediately stops black from castling kingside, forcing him to look for a way to develop his queenside pieces. For example, queen a5, we can play a move h3, not allowing a gain of tempo with bishop g4. And here, it's hard for black to find a move, since next move white can follow up with a move g4, threatening g5. For example, he could play rook f8. We can follow up with king b1, bishop d7, knight e2, castles, and g4 for white, with a very unclear position, but one which is far easier to play as white than it is to play as black. Instead, Andreikin preferred the move king b1. The game continued queen a5. This allows bishop c4. Black played the move rook f8. White played knight ge2. So white's not in a real rush to win the e4 pawn back. He's just going to play around the e4 pawn and instead go for the move h3 g4, as I mentioned earlier. Black went for the most aggressive option here with bishop g4. White continued h3. Bishop takes. Queen takes. And black took the pawn on f4. Since at this point, if he castles, then it's very likely that white will win the pawn back with some advantage due to white having the bishop pair and some light squared weaknesses to play against. Here white continued knight takes e4. And in this position, black could take the knight on e4, queen takes, and then play bishop e5 with a reasonably equal position. Instead, black played the move bishop to e5, which allows a very interesting sacrifice in this position, which Andreikin immediately went for, and that's the move knight takes d6. Here black can't take with the bishop since rook take and the pawn is pinned. Therefore he played pawn takes. And here Andreikin continues the attack with the move rook takes d6. Black plays the only move to defend, and that's the move knight to d7, defending the bishop on e5 and preventing sacrifices on c6. Here white is still doing fine, but he needs to play quite a few accurate moves. For example, bishop takes e5 is necessary, and after knight takes e5, he has to find the move rook hd1, which is not an easy move to find since it's a quiet move after sacking a piece for free. He can continue rook f5, but then we can bring the other rook into d5 with a significant amount of pressure in this position. Instead, white played the move rook to d5, which is an inaccuracy and allows black to defend the point on e5 and safely get castled. Here it's difficult for white to maintain the pressure He found the move bishop to b5, and after castles queenside, black is clearly a piece up in this position. The best white could hope for was to go for a position where he wins the piece back for an exchange. He gave up the rook with bishop takes. The problem is in this position that there's no real attack on the queen side, therefore black is simply exchange up, and the rest is a mere matter of technique. And finally, white blunders in this position, allowing the exchange of queens into a winning king and pawn ending. So that's it for this video, guys. In the next video, I'm going to cover the move knight f6 instead of f5 in the same opening variation. And thanks for watching. I will see you guys on that video. Later.